everybody. It is Pam here, coming to you from the beautiful city of Lille in France. And we're having a little bit of a rest afternoon, rest as in not walking around, walking our socks off. We've been away for a couple of weeks now, had a very hot 6 days, felt like 6 weeks in Paris. Paris is just probably my favorite city in the world, but I have vowed never to come back here in the middle of summer. Apart from it being very busy with lots of tourists, the heat was just next level. We had about 5 days, I think, of 38 degrees, didn't get below about 26, 27 at night. And unlike us in Australia, where we're set up to deal with the heat, whether it's fans or air cons or just generally our buildings being designed more to deal with that kind of weather, our verandas and whatnot. The buildings in Paris, certainly the apartment we stayed at in Paris, was stone. It was a little studio. It was very small. It held the heat. And it was like walking into a sauna every time we went back in. We did lots of walking around still and really loved Paris, of course. But as I said, summertime, maybe not. We then had a few beautiful days up in the Champagne region. We tasted lots of lovely champagne samples in the champagne houses up there. And then a much more sobering couple of days in the Amiens area, where we visited quite a few war graves and cemeteries and memorials, which was really interesting for me, having taught modern history and studied modern history at uni and never having been to that area. And that was something that I had always wanted to do. So it's very moving, very emotional to be there, where so many people, young men, had died during the First World War. So we're now in Lille for a day or two, and then we are heading up actually to the Netherlands to go to my niece's wedding, which will be lovely. So see some family there and celebrate with her before a day or two in Amsterdam, and then heading home. I thought I'd take this little break in our touring around to edit and bring you the next episode of Rights for Women, which is a fabulous chat with Lindsay Bartels. Lindsay has a brand new memoir out. This is her first kind of long form bit of writing that is being released. She's done blogging and different things, which we talk about in the interview. And this is just a very interesting topic, being about Lindsay and her husband's decision as to whether or not to keep an embryo that they had stored, in light of the fact that it was carrying a gene, just as Lindsay did, which could lead to the child at some point in her life having cancer. So a very tricky ethical question, tricky emotionally, and Lindsay just talks about it so beautifully in this interview, and this will be a great memoir to read, Imogen in Waiting. I hope you enjoyed this chat with Lindsay. And Lindsay is touring around the place. She's also doing some events in the US, which is amazing. And just check out her website, lindsaybartels.com, and you should be able to find out where she is appearing. And certainly you can grab the book. It is out now. I've just finished listening to an audiobook of another very moving memoir written by Hannah Ritchell about the death of her husband, Matt Ritchell, in a surfing accident over 10 years ago now. And Matt was the CEO of Hachette Australia, and he took that position just as I was starting to be published by Hachette. So I did meet Matt briefly at one time, and I have had the pleasure of meeting Hannah a few times and talking to her on the podcast, and I absolutely love Hannah's fiction. This is the first time she's written a memoir and, of course, tackled a very deeply emotional subject and done it so beautifully. I do warn you, it is quite heartbreaking, but there is also a lot of hope and joy, and the resilience that Hannah shows in the way that she dealt with that grief. And I know Hannah would be the first to say she doesn't feel that she did it in any particularly special way, but just the fact that she's sharing her journey. I think most of us have experienced grief in one form or another, perhaps not to the same extent as Hannah, losing her life partner at such a young age. She was only 39 with 2 young children. So anyway, highly recommended reading or listening. Hannah does do the audiobook herself, so it makes it even more poignant. And I'm looking forward to going and seeing Hannah speak about it at Three Sparrows bookshop on the 23rd of July. Tickets are available for that if anyone's interested, and she's also doing some other events. And I will be talking to Hannah in a month or so on the podcast as well, so watch out for that. I won't bog you down with too much more of an intro than to say that there is, of course, the Substack bonus subscribers, little additional episode with Lindsay as well that will be coming out to you very soon. There are 2 write-ins coming up for paid subscribers towards the end of July. I've emailed about that and I will send reminders about those dates. And in personal book news, very exciting for me is that I have a release date for my new book, Because You're Mine. At this stage, it's only going to be coming out in ebook or on Kindle, but that's great because I know I have lots of readers out there who do read on Kindle. It will hopefully be coming out in audio and definitely in print at some stage. We just don't have dates for that yet. Because Your Mine will be out in October in ebook, and I am looking for people to get some ebook So if you are interested in that, do email me at pamela@pamelacook.com.au if you'd like to be on the email list for an arc of Because You're Mine, a Kindle version. So excited. Can't wait to see the cover that my publisher Vinci are putting together and to start sharing some more news about that. Don't forget the write-ins if you're a paid subscriber. If you aren't, check out the Rights for Women Substack. And don't forget that you can also, as a paid subscriber, send me through 3,000 words, usually the opening, but it doesn't have to be, and receive feedback. And that videoed feedback will also go out to the paid subscribers so they can hopefully learn something from that as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm going to be doing a meet your character or explore your character. I haven't come up with a name for it yet. Write along type thing, which I'll be putting together. And basically, so I've got a few different characters I want to start exploring. I want to have a really good handle on those characters or try and decide which of those characters I want to actually turn into a protagonist to write a story about. So I'm going to spend some time doing some exercises exploring who those characters are, going into their kind of psychology, their history, their family, their loves, their likes, their hates, all of those things, more to do with their emotional makeup and the reasons that they are who they are. And I thought it'd be nice if we do some exercises together. I'll be putting together, probably doing 3 to 4 different exercises per week. We don't have to all do them at the same time. But if you'd like to do that, that will be a bonus coming up for paid subscribers as well. So I'm still forming that. Hopefully between now and the time that I get home, that will all be locked in and I can let you know the details. But certainly love to have you along for that journey of finding out more about our characters. You might have already started writing the character. It might be something that you just want to do as a side hustle to your fiction writing, or you might have a character in mind that you haven't started writing about yet, like me, and you want to explore them a little bit further. So that is about all from me. Let's chat to Lindsay Bartels about her brand new release, Imogen in Waiting.
So, Lindsay Bartels, welcome to the Rights for Women Convo Couch. It's great to have you on here. We were just chatting before I pressed record about how you start to feel like you know people when you're chatting to them on social media. But of course, this is the first time we've actually met. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It feels like such an honor to be here across the screen from you. So thank you.
Oh, lovely to have you. And big news for you is that your book was released yesterday, I believe.
Yes, I am still on the mania high of it. It's very exciting.
Wow. It's amazing. Yes. We're going to talk all about it. And it's a memoir, this one.
Yes.
But before we do that, I would love to talk to you about your history in terms of how you got into writing, because I noticed from having a look at your bio that you actually trained in filmmaking and you went into architecture. So I'm really curious as to what's brought you onto the writing path. So can you give us a little bit of a history of how you ended up being where you are now?
Yes. So like many other writers, I kept a journal when I was growing up, and I always was writing by hand mostly. And I very much wasn't attached to my journals, though. Many people keep theirs and reference them, but every time the family moved, like in my bio, you see I was in Texas and then Colorado, and then I went off to university. I'd purge my journals. I just wouldn't keep them. And once WordPress became a thing and there were online blogs, I started blogging. And I mentioned to Joe quickly of Yellow Shelf that I got really nervous when somebody I didn't know, like a stranger, would comment on my blog, and I was being really personal. I'd share what it was like in university that week and maybe having a crush or something. And then some stranger, and I think it was like a man, would be like, oh, interesting. Tell me more. And I'd be like, oh, I can't have a blog. It just freaks me out. And so writing's always been a way that I tracked what I was experiencing and how I was sharing that with the world. And I feel like I have a default sharing kind of personality. And I always wanted to be creative. And my mom was a writer. So she's a trained screenwriter. And so I grew up seeing her writing screenplays, and she writes some long form, like she has a memoir, and she's written some other stories and adaptations of stories. So writing was always in the ether in our house, which was really cool.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And I guess this isn't the nicest thing to say, but she'd understand. Sometimes when you're around your parents, you don't want to be them, right? So I never really was like, I'm going to be a writer like my mom. I was like, I'm going to do filmmaking, because we all loved film growing up. And it just felt like if I'm going to go learn something new, I want to learn that, because it's the craft in of itself that is harder to self-teach, I think. And then I was in film and advertising. It was very stressful, and people that really got ahead in that vocation or that career really, I would say, eat, slept, drank film. I was in LA for a couple years and really saw my peers getting ahead if they stayed and worked over holidays and they didn't go home on weekends, and they put off marriage and kids for a decade or so. And I was
Right.
just like, for me, that's too unbalanced. And I really wanted to have a balanced career. So I went to a career coach actually, and I took this huge test. And I only looked back on it a few months ago, and I saw that writing came up as something that I would do well and really enjoy, because it was
Okay.
about what you're good at, but what you'd also enjoy. But 20 years ago, I decided to do interior architecture instead, because again, that felt like a craft I could learn that was tactile, but I wanted to learn just the craft. Sorry, that's not a very eloquent way to say it, but
That's all right.
that's why I went down that path. And once I got diagnosed with breast cancer in my 20s, I went back to blogging, and I was sharing with my family and my friends the experiences that I was having and the hope and the inspiration I'd find along the way. Sadly, that was on the Tumblr platform that is now long gone. And so I don't have any of that writing either, but it's just a way to keep stories alive and to share experiences. And so I always had that going in the background. And it wasn't until having kids and really surrendering to being the full-time parent that I felt desperate for a creative outlet that was accessible and on my own time, and found writing again, and really felt pushed to tell this story of my memoir once I'd had a hysterectomy and got to the end of the arc of the journey that I describe in the story. And I felt like I wasn't worried about having this BRCA gene, the risk that comes with the BRCA genetic mutation that I talk about in my memoir anymore, because my ovaries were gone and they were at risk for ovarian cancer later in life, and my breast tissue's all gone. So I was like, oh, I can be that creative self again before I had all the cancer stuff. And yeah, that's how I came back to writing, and it
Wow.
was incredible, and I love it now.
Amazing. So it sounds like it's something I'd totally forgotten about Tumblr too, by the way, until you
Yeah.
mentioned that. Yeah, I forgot that
Oh.
was big. I think I did a couple of things on Tumblr, but yeah, I had a blog and all that sort of stuff as well too. But it sounds that writing has been in the background or sometimes coming more to the foreground for you really for all of your life.
Yeah. And I think having the film experience as well, it makes it a mixed medium to tell stories. Like on Instagram, I love that I can make little reels of book events and things and tell a story a different way, because with writing, to really have it be good and something I'm proud of, it takes time. And I'm very grateful for all the time it has taken for my memoir to be what it is today. But with images and that sort of thing, it can be more of a quick production for me, which I
You've got
creative
that
outlet.
storytelling gene.
Oh, there you go. I know that there are good genes in there.
Yeah,
that
there's
I
some great
appreciate.
genes. We'll get on to talking
Yes.
about the other genes in a minute.
Okay, no
Um,
problem.
So Imogen in Waiting is your memoir, which, as we said, was out yesterday. Is that the kind of full-length thing that you've published other than your kind of more short-form writings?
Yes, it is. It's the first thing that was like over 60,000 words. That it was at one point 90,000, then 80, then 70. I think it ended up at 65,000.
Yeah.
So it's not a big read, but yeah. And I couldn't do that on my own. I definitely needed help. And I also don't like being siloed from the world. I think it's lovely to some extent, but I listened to Mary Adkins' podcast, The First Draft Club, and it was like these 20-minute little bites. And I was in the US at the time, and the way she was talking about writing felt very accessible. You can do it, and you just gotta believe in yourself and have the right framework to get there. And that just was very doable for me. And so she set up this program of writing where she uses 4 notebooks to carry you to 70,000 words and hit all the different markers on a classic 3-act structure.
Okay.
And once I had that framework, I was like, oh, my life can totally fit into these 4 notebooks. And writing by hand is something that I already know and love with journaling. And it just felt doable. But having those tools got me there. And I think if I just pitter-pattered around on my own, I would have given up because it's very easy not get there.
That sounds like a really interesting
Yes.
process. So you basically wrote the memoir longhand, like a journaling in the notebooks?
Yes. Would you like a little more detail?
Yeah, I think that sounds really interesting.
So I'm going to botch it a little bit, but I'm botching it a little bit on purpose because obviously I don't want to share her secret sauce.
Yeah.
But the first notebook and the way I structured it for my memoir was basically the setup. She has everybody start, whether it's a novel or a memoir, with a big question, a big thorny, almost ethical question that doesn't have a clear answer, and writing towards that, which, side note, I just love for any kind of writing because it empowers me as a writer to write towards something I'm curious about and want to learn more and look at all sides of it.
Yeah.
But starting my process, I already knew the big question was whether or not I was going to bring this embryo to life that I knew had this cancer causing genetic disposition, just like me, and was female. But the beginning, first notebook, I wanted to say what my experience was having this gene and kind of set up why I wanted to do IVF in the first place. So the first notebook talks about when I was 26 and was diagnosed with breast cancer when my life was seemingly fine, everything going well. I felt healthy and independent and awesome. Woohoo! Here I go in life. And then I got this cancer diagnosis and I was like, that was unexpected. And so the first notebook gets me to about 15,000 words, actually, because I loved seeing Lily King at the Sydney Writers Festival with the notebook. I actually have my Mary notebook. So it's spiral bound and nice and big.
Yeah.
And that's not my memoir. So I'm going to go blank page. So there's lines on one page and you write on the lines. And then there's a blank sheet on the other page, which she says to leave blank. So you can write ideas or
Good idea.
yourself of, oh, I want to research that timeline a little better. Or I know there was another thought I had here that I want to come back to because it's the messy first draft.
Yeah.
And I think it's, let's see, 100 pages. So you get 100 words and 100 pages of written words. And yeah, so that gets you to, I think it was 17,000 words or 14,000, somewhere around there. And at the end of that notebook, I got to the point where I was given the opportunity to do IVF to not pass on the gene. This was after I'd had cancer and was married. And my husband and I were like, we don't want our future children to have cancer, so we're going to do it. So that was notebook 1. Then notebook 2. And I don't really think it's a big deal to talk about spoilers for memoir. I'm not precious about them. So the second notebook, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really like, okay, things are like smooth sailing now. And this is what our choices are and how we think life is going to pan out. So another 15,000 words or so. And I'm talking about how we did the IVF. We learned that we had this embryo that was female and had the gene just like me. But we were like, we're going to go ahead and transfer one at a time the 2 embryos we knew didn't have the gene because that was our initial plan. So we do that and share my experience with getting pregnant through IVF to normalize that road for different couples and how even through going through all the stuff I went through with my pregnancies, at the end of the second notebook, I was like, I still can't stop thinking about that embryo. And I want to revisit it. So then the third notebook is we start off thinking we're going to have this embryo and we are going to transfer it. And we're in San Francisco at the time. The whole story thus far has taken place in San Francisco, and a job opportunity comes up for my husband in Sydney. And this was back in 2019. And at that moment, we were like, okay, we know we have this embryo. We know we want to go forward with it, but it's a really rare opportunity to get to live in Sydney. And we were initially thinking it was just for a year. And what a cool gift to give our two boys that we do have and take a break from the stressors of the Bay Area and all the pressures of work, but just have a new experience. And we get to Sydney and you can guess what happens next. First, there was the fires and we just left California where there was a bushfire every year. And we were like, this is even worse. Like, never seen one so horrible. And then COVID happened and we were okay. Initially thinking the middle of 2020, we were going to return to the US and transfer the embryo. But everyone in the US was locked down and we were locked down. And we're like, why go back there when everybody's locked down? When here we could, at that first lockdown in Sydney, go for an hour walk and maybe just be outside in nature at the beach. We're like, we live in the most beautiful area, so we'll just hunker down. So this was all the second notebook of, okay, there's new things life is throwing at us. And how are we now navigating that? And we get to a point where we try to bring the embryo over, which apparently you can do shipping on an airplane. And it's been done all the time. And there were clinics here in Sydney that had worked with our clinic in San Francisco, like the exact one, for over 25 years. So all these things, we were like, that's so cool. But then there was another lockdown and just wait list, like flights weren't coming over. And I think right in the beginning of 2021, before we had our third lockdown, everybody was just feeling really good. I remember we went to the Royal Sydney Easter Fair and like nobody was masked up and everyone was like gathering again. And people in the US were like, that's so amazing. How are you guys like that in Sydney? And we're like, we're so lucky. Like, everyone felt really good. And so we're like, okay, we're going to bring this embryo over. We're all feeling good and capable. And then we meet with a new IVF doctor to us here. And they're like, it's basically illegal to transfer an embryo that you know has this genetic mutation in Australia unless it is your only option. And you undergo extensive counseling. So we were like, what? Like, why didn't anybody tell us that before? So that threw a loop. And then we got to a place where we asked lots of questions to try to make it happen anyway, but of course we couldn't leave the country. My husband and I had to just look again and say, okay, we can't leave the country right now. It's in lockdown. We know we wanted to have this third child. We knew she was a girl. In Australia, if we did IVF again to not pass on the gene, we wouldn't be able to learn the gender. They don't give you that information here. No matter which way you slice it, even if you use a lab outside of Australia, they will not give you the information. I asked lots of questions. And so my husband is the third of 3 boys. And then we already had 2 boys. And then the girl could be like me. So we were both just attached to the idea of a third for different reasons. And we felt this kind of capacity open up in us. And we're like, maybe having this embryo told us that this is what we want for our family, like to have another one. And if we hadn't been considering her for so long, we wouldn't know this. So we felt very hopeful. This is all happening in the third notebook. And then we decided to do one more like Hail Mary round of IVF to see if we could get one more embryo that didn't carry the gene, no matter the gender. And at this time, the Delta variant was becoming more prominent. The schools where my boys were in, and they were really young at the time, like 4 and 6 maybe at most. The teachers were getting really stressed. There were new parameters in place, like where parents could go into the classroom when they dropped the kids off. And then there were things coming out in the kids' behaviors and well-being that was really stressful. So that stress was happening. Then we both got a really bad cold and had to take a COVID test every day for the lab to do this transfer. So we ended up doing a transfer. I was 34 38, I think at the time, 37, 38. And they say your ovarian reserve like really depletes at 35. And by 40, it's like really minimal. So it was like the best time of the time to do it is just like as soon as possible. And in the end, we got one embryo from that retrieval, and it turned out to have the gene. And it was also chromosomally abnormal, so they wouldn't recommend transferring it. And after all this stuff going on, when we got that information, Sydney went into its third lockdown, which I'm sure you remember was the hardest
vividly
and longest of them all. And the kids were like literally jumping off the bed. We were in apartment living, right? It was just so intense that we were like, I think it's time to just let this go. We really looked at it. We really considered it. We tried. And so that's the unexpected ending of the third notebook. So there's the low.
You must have been feeling pretty like dejected about it all at that point, Lindsay. Were you? Were you philosophical, or how were you emotionally about it all by then?
I think I had been through so many ups and downs where I just couldn't let the idea of her go, that by that point, I feel like my capacity was just maxed out. And it was almost like I had to just honor my truth and myself and be like, it's okay. I can't keep going down this road and look after two boys that I'm so blessed to already have that are very healthy and that obviously need me a lot right now. And these are unforeseen circumstances with COVID. So I think life had a play in it. And I was like, I surrender. And I also realized I tried. But it was still really hard to let the idea of her go, because when we called the lab to say, you can release our embryo, they're like, we don't really release anything. We hold on to it. I think it's like a liability thing in case patients come back years later and are like, oh, I actually really want that. So then the beginning of the fourth notebook is, okay, paradigm shift in the story. What happened that we weren't expecting? So COVID was over and we were like, we've been in Australia for 3 years. Maybe we're going to live here now. And this is our new home and we will be here permanently.
Yeah.
And we kind of tried to double down on it. And everything was stressful to me at the time. My neighbors were stressful when they were just giving me a hard time about the kids being noisy or playing in the back garden. School stuff for my youngest was stressful because the teacher just really wanted him to conform in a certain way. And he was 4. And I was like, he just needs to be wild in himself and free and he's fine. This is just the aftermath of COVID. There was a lot of pressures. And then there was flooding and we were like stuck in our apartment then too. And the boys couldn't get out and play, and leaks in the roof and strata issues. Just all these little things were piling up. And then we had some friends pass away, which was really hard, from breast cancer in the US, and we couldn't get back. So once the country opened up and we planned to return to the US for a visit, I ended up getting there. And I think it was this whole fight or flight. And I finally was home around people that knew me and loved me unconditionally. And I was just like, I need to recover from all the experiences that I've had that were really intense. And I couldn't return to Australia. I don't know. I couldn't get back on the flight. I was like, I just need to be here. And the kids were with their grandparents and totally embraced and had never lived close to them, and their cousins. And it was just like, we needed to heal and we needed space. And I went to see a gynecological oncologist that was at Colorado University, their University of Colorado, and who really had a strong opinion that once I turned 40, my risk for ovarian cancer was going to basically shoot through the roof, and to really have my ovaries removed. And a year before or so, I'd seen a doctor in Australia who was kind of like a little more neutral and wasn't giving me a strong opinion, and was like, you've done everything you can by I had my tubes removed, my fallopian tubes, and having scans every year. But then the doctor in Australia said, if you do see ovarian cancer, it'll be too late and you can't really reverse it. So I was kind of like, wouldn't you want me to have my ovaries out? Like, I don't know. But I think that there's a risk too for heart disease without those hormones and having that organ in your body.
So
as
you
a
got to weigh
female.
all that. Yeah.
So But the doctor was so definitive in the US and at the forefront of her research that I was like, okay, I'm here right now. There's no COVID. We're not going anywhere. Let me just do the surgery. And I was shocked at the end of the surgery that I felt relief and I felt like I'd saved my own life, that I could be here for the family that needs me. And all this worrying that I'd had for the last 5 or so years on my shoulders of what to do or not to do about passing on the gene or how to stay around for my kid, that just fell away. And then I came back to my creative self at the end, and we had another opportunity to return to Australia. And I'm so happy to be here, but I couldn't access that place in myself before
Yeah.
until I repaired. And so then at the end, when I had the surgery, I was like, I know I need to write this story because people don't talk about embryos on ice enough or these modern reproductive questions. And all the people I consulted, all the doctors, they won't give you an answer as far as what to do because it's so personal and it's so gray. And a lot of it is, what can you handle as a
Yeah.
person and a family? And that's only something you can answer.
What a story. I'm just thinking,
oh my God.
I know.
Yes.
No, I'm not going to
Oh.
ask you anything
That's
about
okay.
too much about the fourth journal because I think people need to read the book.
Oh, that is the fourth one.
Oh,
I
that
told you
is the
whole
fourth
thing.
one.
That was the
Okay.
fourth one, was like, sorry, returning to the US and getting to that place. Sorry, people.
Yes.
But there is so much nuance in there, and there's so many characters I haven't introduced, and people say it's funny. And I talk to the embryo and I name her Imogen, and that actually kind of came in a later draft. Once I'd
Okay.
gotten my whole kind of story down, transcribed it, I needed it to come more alive. And I only wrote her a letter at the beginning and then didn't talk to her the whole time. But my editor was really great in saying, let's talk to her more often and consider these moments if she was there. And I was like, that is so magic. I love it. So
Wow. How
that
did you
happened
feel
on the
about doing
page.
that? Did that kind of make it harder for you to write, or was that a good experience for you, more humanizing, I guess, or personalizing it?
I think it made it more magical and special,
Yeah.
and it felt alive. It felt more fun, even for me as a writer, to write in that kind of conversation as a way of honoring the experience and capturing that this was an entity we considered for so long and the kind of presence that she had in our lives, and how it wasn't just an easy answer. And there were a lot of consideration and a lot of things we tried to do along the way, and truth we tried to reveal in ourselves and honor, and then how life just happened. And there's only so much you can control. And in a way that felt more accessible to a wider audience than me just saying, this happened and this happened. It was a lot. It just makes it more dynamic and interesting, I think, as a reader too.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you did all your journals, then was it a matter of like when you went back to revise, were you typing things up on your computer at that point? How did you go about the revision process when you had those 4 journals there finished?
Yes. So this is also Mary Atkinsism, and this is why I loved her process so much. Is she said, set it aside for a while so you forget what you wrote. I am just an antsy, get on with it person. So I think the longest I could set it aside was 3 weeks before I was like, I just want to keep going. But then I transcribed the journals, which took a long time. And I was, I'm never handwriting a whole thing again and transcribing it at the end because that's a lot of work. But it was good because I was revisiting it, and the whole process that she gives, and I really followed it to a T, is do not edit while you're transcribing, transcribe it, then print it out and read it as a reader. And the thing to read was, what parts are you bored by? What parts are you loving and you're engaged? And what parts are really confusing to you? And just mark those before you get into the minutia of the words. Do that. And this is before anybody has read any of it. So no feedback, no other eyes. It really allowed me to get all my feelings out, all the scenes that I thought were really important. And then after some daylight, I revisited and I was like, yeah, I don't need to say that. It's a little much. Or I don't want to throw that person under the bus. Like, why? Or that experience was like, yes, hard for me, but who's really going to care that doesn't know me? I had this scene where I got a ticket from a cop, but I was so mad about it. And then I had my first reader be like, do we really need to read that? No. But it was bothersome to me. So, you start to learn where your darlings are and which ones you need to kill and which ones there's something there. And I also evolved my structure from time stamping it so religiously. Like when I wrote it by hand, I was like, this date and this location, this happened. And it wasn't until further drafts where I realized, okay, I can summarize more of that. Every moment doesn't have to be dropped in, and be more reflective, and also add in more details and more sensory things for people that don't know me and weren't there,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
skimmed over the first few
Yeah.
drafts.
So how much work did
Yeah.
you have to do before it went to, did it go to other readers before you had it edited? How did you tackle that part of the process?
Yes. I had done all this, read it as a reader, did my own edit, printed it again, edited it again. And I did all this probably within, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks to get
Yeah.
it to a place where I felt like, okay, people can read it. And let me tell you, the first time someone read this, and it's so personal, I don't think I could function for a week. I
Oh,
sent it off,
no.
and there were even people, I sent it off to a lot of people. It was probably too much, like 8 people. And
Yeah.
4 were people that were writers I kind of got connected to that didn't know me or my story, and 4 were like trusted friends who were writers or big readers. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I think I took 2 showers or 3 showers a day, and it was Colorado, so it was cold, and I just dry my hair for a really long time because the heat felt good. I don't know. I just like didn't function very well that week. And then I started to get the feedback. And the first feedback that I got was just all really positive. A lot of people really loved a lot of it. So that was just very fueling and
Right.
reassuring and helped me keep going. The biggest feedback I think at the time was I did a lot of asides and parentheses because
Yeah.
it's the way I talk, and it just came across amateur. And people were
Okay.
like, no, take out all those asides. I was like, but sometimes I really want to have that aside. And they were like, okay, use them sparingly. And in high school, I was taught in my advanced placement English courses to vary up how people said things, right? They didn't just say said, or I can't even remember anymore because now everybody said, just say said, just say said, just say said. So that was a lot of my revision process. It was more just little craft things that I was learning along the way. And I was so grateful to have that help. And then once I started querying it, it was really about a year after I started writing it because it was a story I already knew. And I think
Yeah.
that helped a lot. It was
Yeah.
already shaped in my mind, and I knew I wanted to tell it. And a lot of the cathartic emotions came out in that early draft with the writing of it by hand. That once I got to querying it, I felt a lot more confident. And then I had an editor look at it and give me a developmental light edit where they said general feedback and here are 1 to 5 things to fix before you engage with agents. And that was really helpful. Some of it was more staying to the arc of the story and cutting out extra stories that were important to me along the lines of what I said earlier, but
Yeah.
maybe
Bit
just
peripheral.
less,
Yeah.
interesting to a general reader. People wanted a lot more detail about me and about my family, and that was hard feedback to incorporate it because some things I didn't want to tell,
Yeah.
and especially if it wasn't my story to tell. And I really tried to focus the full book on my perspective and my experience and not put words in anyone else's mouth. But that's not to say I couldn't describe a little bit more and like
Yeah.
explain a little more of our story. And so people understood my affection for him in all those moments, or my frustration. So
Yeah.
just
Depending
going
on
in
the
and
day.
adding a little more of
Yeah.
that exactly was really good. And honestly, so the Third Rail Press that was started, it's all just very serendipitous for my journey and how this happened. I was getting a lot of kind rejections, which I appreciate. Any kind of feedback from an agent saying, this is a great story, an important story, but I can't champion it in the market for
Right.
whatever reason, even though embryos were a hot topic at the time, especially in the US, like whether they're children and should be discarded or not, all those things
Yeah.
were being very political. Maybe because of that, a lot of editors were like, sorry, that's not going to work in Big Five publishing. And so I'm talking a lot about Mary Adkins. She was just like such a beacon for me in this process. She at the time had written a memoir about having 4 miscarriages in a year.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
and she'd already published 3 books with HarperCollins novels, and she couldn't find anyone to publish her memoir. And
Okay.
she was just like, I had this experience and I want to read these other experiences on the page, and I'm not finding them in any works that are printed except for one. Jessica Zucker wrote a book called I Had a Miscarriage, and it was either self-published or published with a university press. I can't remember, but she put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. And so Mary was finding she couldn't find a home for her memoir. And there was another writer in her program who has since become an editor who's incredible, Ali Mudrick. And she also had a memoir that she'd written about having infant loss during pregnancy. And it was beautiful and heartbreaking, but also talking about these topics for women that people are scared to talk about, and I think shy away from because they don't want to have that experience. But part of it's just empathizing or understanding what happens in those moments, and that it's happened a lot more often than we think. We just don't talk about it as a society. So the two of them got together and they started this press, Third Rail Press,
Really?
because they were like, we need to tell more of these stories that are the third rail in publishing, that electric voltage channel that can't be touched, and to
Right.
touch it, and we're not afraid. And so it came about with a Kickstarter program.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I knew them, but I had to still pitch my story to them, going through the appropriate channels. I
Yeah.
didn't have an agent. And I actually got we love you, Lindsay, and we love this story, but if it's comfortable with you, like they're very much, we're not going to make you write something that you don't want to write, but if it's comfortable with you, please revise and resubmit. And we had a discussion about what those lines were. And again, it was like to put even more of myself on the page. And
Okay.
I think part of it's like, I was sick of talking about myself. It wasn't in that way, right? They were like, just that more interiority, so the reader could really get to know me as the main character. And I think no one had given me that permission before.
Okay.
So I was like,
Yeah.
I can do that. And then I revised it and resubmitted it, and they accepted it. And they are like a small press, but a traditional press. So
Yeah.
that was really wonderful. And it's been an incredible experience as far as collaborating than I could ever imagine.
So when you did that last revision where you said, and I think I've spoken to people before who have written memoir, and this is often a thing about putting more of yourself in there, like more for the reader to empathize with your story and your emotions and all that sort of thing. When you finished that revision, how did you feel about it then? Did you think, yeah, okay, this is how it needs to be? What were your reactions to that final version?
There's so many reactions along the way, which now I know is very normal. But at first I was like, okay, I can do this. And then I was very vulnerable again, right? Super, super vulnerable. But I could feel that it felt better, that it was really good. And this was the kind of stuff that I couldn't access on my own. Really working in collaboration with someone who could see it and also really bring the heart of the story out even more was like some kind of, it was amazing to have. It was Ali Mudrick who edited my story. But of course you submit it and then she's busy doing 10,000 other things and you don't hear her for a month or two. And I was like, oh my God, did I hit the mark? Is this going to be okay? Is she still
Were you
gonna
showering a
publish
lot
me?
again?
Yeah, exactly. I need a hot shower or the cold ocean now that I'm here. That helps. Totally. So it's still an up and down road because you don't get instant feedback. But I think this is the publishing muscle that I'm now learning, right?
Yeah.
But now that it's done and I know it's published, it's funny, it took like all the way to the final version where I trusted it would actually be real.
Yeah.
Just because of the communication factor, I think when you don't hear back from people, you start to second guess everything. That I'm like, it is the best possible version it could be. And I have nothing in there that I regret, touch wood. And I feel very comfortable with everything that's been left on the page, which I think I was not expecting in the end. So that's really nice.
And it's funny that, like, when you were saying earlier, oh, this might be telling too much of the story, but Everything you've told me about it just makes me really want to read it. So I'm
Aw.
sure that listeners are going to have that same experience.
And even just from a craft perspective to see what's really in there, what got left on the
Yeah.
page, and is it
Yeah.
really magical or not? I don't know. So
So you
we'll find
mentioned at
out.
the beginning that the thing that you start with when you start that journaling process was asking a big question.
Yes.
What was the big question that you were looking to answer?
Yes. So it was whether or not to bring this embryo into being.
Mm.
And the nuance of it is I am female and have this gene and I love my life. And I have gotten through the hard times and I've been stronger for them. And I feel like my life has become better for them. And I often say I don't wish it on anyone, but for me, I'm so grateful for the experiences that I've had. Who am I to take that away from a potential entity? And my parents didn't know before they had me that I had this gene. And what if
Right.
they'd
Yeah.
known and then I wasn't here, right? So that just gave me chills talking about it. Like, it's
Mm.
so hard to know. And then I think at the end, I was like, I have to trust that she'd make her own decision because that's what I want as a child from my parents is like that autonomy and that ability and dignity to be trusted with my own decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard as a parent to honor, but as the child, I'm very fierce about it. So I was like, okay, this girl will be like me, but also maybe she won't. And I'll have to just let life be life. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I ended up surrendering to. But even with that in mind, I couldn't bring her to life. I
Yeah.
couldn't achieve the outcome I
Yeah.
wanted and why. And so I really, even after making the decision before I had my surgery, still couldn't really remember all the steps I'd done along the way. So writing it out also just helped me remember that I did do everything I could and I looked at it every which way I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
and talked to all of the necessary people that I felt like I needed to. And I just had to remind myself. Yeah.
Obviously that it is a genetic form of breast cancer that you
Mhm.
had. Were there other people in your family like that you were aware of when you were in your 20s who had suffered from breast cancer?
So at the point that I found out that I had the breast cancer, my paternal grandmother had it, but it was after menopause. And I didn't know that it's more common for women to have breast cancer after menopause. So nobody thought to test her
Right.
for the gene. And then when I found out that I had the gene, it's a Ashkenazi Jewish lineage gene that it's more dominant in. And
Okay.
I knew that my dad's side of the family had the Ashkenazi Jewish lineage. So between both my parents, we were like, okay, it's my dad. But then he had blood work done and I had the blood work done to show that it was. And so his siblings got tested and I don't know the results of everyone, but I just know I had an aunt that was negative. So I think it's a 50-50. I mean, it
Right.
is a 50-50 chance that it gets passed on because for every gene we have, there are two copies. And one of the copies has the mutation and the other copy is like a normal copy. So the parent can pass on the normal copy or the mutated copy to the other parent will always give a unaffected copy of that gene. Sorry, getting a little
No,
scientific
it's so
here.
technical, isn't it?
Yeah. And so once I had it, my siblings got tested. I have a sister and she then found out she was a carrier of it too. So we started to learn in hindsight, right, that we had
Yeah.
it and how to help ourselves moving forward. So she
Yeah.
also had some preventative surgeries. So
Right.
she isn't at the high risk anymore, which is good. And it's so weird, like even though I had breast cancer already, because of that, the statistics showed I was even more susceptible to another cancer having had the gene. So just all this risk.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
ugh, things we
Yeah.
never
I
knew
mean,
we had to think about.
so amazing, like the medical knowledge now. I'm thinking like your grandmother when she was younger
Yeah.
or whatever, or even like you said, they didn't know until after she had menopause. But it's amazing that we have all this medical knowledge now, and you would have been really drumming up on all of that to do with your cancer, but then also the whole IVF journey that you went on and the embryo situation. You must have spent a lot of hours reading and researching and all of that sort of thing.
I will give you a spoiler alert that I did not. So here's the cool thing
Okay.
is my dad, of all things, was an IVF specialist. And
Really?
a comment, something in common that I never guessed we would have at such an early age in my 20s. And having him as a confidant, as a guide, helped me so much to know if things were sound with the doctor's advice I was getting. I would always bounce things off of him. And so in the story, I really portray the experience from basically layman's terms. I decided I didn't want to have a hybrid memoir that had a lot of medical in it, and I didn't want case studies because personally, I don't like reading those kind of memoirs as much. I find it harder to keep my interest. So I just wanted to really share the human story and how much information I got as a patient, in hopes that if there was another patient that read it, they'd know these are some things they could ask, or this is like one person's experience, will mine be similar or different, right?
Yes. Amazing. And what was it like to finally hold the book in your hand when you opened that box and got your copies?
It's so lovely. It's like I envisioned it for so long, and just having that vision keeps you going, that it just felt like it was always going to be there. I knew it was going to happen. So it wasn't unbelievable, right? I was like, yep, this is here. It's supposed to be here. It was really cool to see the spine and the back, because I didn't get to see those online before it came to life. And it just feels good. And it's nice that it feels good, because I reread it and reread it so many times. And I was so nervous about finding mistakes or not wanting to reread it. But I did, you may have seen, do the audio book for it, which was really great. And if anyone has the opportunity to read their book aloud or an audiobook or just to themselves, it helped catch so many typos and things that I thought I was saying, but I wasn't really saying, or things that were wrong. Like I said regime 2 times when I meant regimen, and nobody picked that up because it's so similar. But I was like, oh no, I did not mean regime. So I think we were just so thorough with the edits that by the time it's been printed, I just feel good about it.
Yeah.
There's a typo that's very human, but I was nervous a few months ago that I'd get it and I'd find stuff and I'd be like, oh, but I wasn't. So that's really nice.
That's fantastic. We are going to do a little bonus for the paid Substack supporters in a little bit. But I just wanted to ask you, Lindsay, like I know that you're recently back from a bit of a tour in the US. So tell us about that and how that came about.
Okay, it's so sweet that I think everybody thinks it was a tour. I was there for 48 hours to, I know,
A quick tour.
I'm very quick. I'm going to say yes to this beautiful invitation I received from Zibby Owens to meet other authors on her most anticipated list for summer. So I got to show up for this 2-hour meet and greet where we all pitched our books to each other and just got to meet and support each other, which for the US writing community is so rare because everybody's so spread out. And especially a lot of these authors are so prolific that they just are going off on their own amazing tangents. So all coming together was really special. And that is why I went. And
where did that take place?
It was in New York on the Upper East Side.
Amazing.
Zibby's apartment. It was just so special. And Emma Ray had been there before, and Jane Tara and Anna Johnston. And I got to meet Anna Johnston for the first time in New York. And that was really special. And being there to support each other, but just to connect and to understand that there's just such a big, beautiful world of writers out there that are wanting to help and support one another. It was so magic to be a part of. And then in July, I will get to do a little tour, which I'm really excited about, where I will get to meet in person for the first time Mary Adkin.
Oh, amazing.
She's going to do an event with me. Yes. And Ali Modrick, my editor, we're going to do a couple events in Colorado. And then another writer for Third Rail Press, who was a CNN News anchor, Carol Lynn. We get to do an event together. So I'm very excited to meet, Carol Lynn as well, because we both support each other in the writing of our memoir so much. So it's really a way to meet readers in the US, but also meet other writers that we haven't got to meet in person, and to just honor the culmination of all this work coming together. It's really special.
That's amazing. Have you managed to be part of a writing community here in Australia?
Yes. So while I was waiting for all my edits to come in on my memoir, I was like, I need to be writing and doing something. And I want to write fiction now because it just feels more fun and playful, and also a new muscle for me to hone, just that skill. So I joined the Faber novel writing course for a year with Eleanor Limprecht, and that finished in May. But it was such a great way to meet writers in person. It was like the Sydney in-person meetup one, and there are so many talented writers in that group that it just felt like such an honor to have a seat at the table and then hear their works in progress and share mine as I muddle through fiction. But it's just really fun. And so now I feel like I have some great emerging writers here to tap into for that space,
Yeah.
as well as now being a part of the debut crew here, which is so supportive and incredible. And you find your people in there that align more with your writing style,
Yeah.
so we can support one another moving forward and future projects. So there's so much community here. It's incredible. Be a part of the festival and bringing people to the Northern Beaches Readers Festival. And
Yes.
Matt will get to see you there. It's going to all be
Yeah.
really nice and fun.
I know. That'll be
Cool.
great, which is in September, if everybody.
Yes,
for
end of
anybody-
September.
Before we get on to just the quick bonus for Substack supporters, and we're going to do the fast four in a minute, but where can people find the book here in Australia, Lindsay? Where would they be able to get a copy?
Yes, so that's another whole story. The distribution is Lindsay. So you can DM me if you want, but also Gertrude and Alice in Bondi has copies, and they've also put signed copies up on their website. So you can order them from Gertrude and Alice and they'll ship them to you, which is amazing. And Better Read Than Dead has a few copies in Newtown. Harry Hartog and Mossman will have a few copies, but really it'll be on Booktopia. It is already on Booktopia. It's on Amazon. It'll be on ebook on Amazon and audiobook, which, if it's not out, is coming shortly.
Fantastic.
Thank you for
So
asking.
exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, quick fast four. What's your favourite place to write?
Favorite place. My favorite place to write is cross-legged on my bed with my laptop, which is not good for my back, but it's lovely. I just feel like it's a safe space on my bed, I think, and doesn't feel as high stakes as at a desk.
Yeah, true. Are you still tending to handwrite journal, or are you?
I've evolved. I've forced myself to evolve to just write in Word because it's too much work to transcribe. But if I am stuck or I feel like I need new ideas, I'll grab a notebook and write.
What's something that you'd like? You mentioned that you are going into writing fiction, so that could be the answer. But what's something you'd like to improve on in your writing after having been through this process of completing like a full book and putting it out there?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I'd always like to improve on my inner critic and just not push myself to be so fast. That's my tendency. And I think when I just chill out and let things emerge, the writing is better for it and I don't rush. I don't know, like I have this imaginary deadline in my head and nobody's holding me to it. It's almost the beauty of not having a second book deal. It's like, you don't have one. It's okay. That's in your favor right now. So that's what I'd like to
Take it
improve.
easy.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you a plotter or a pantser, do you think?
I love organizing myself and I love plotting, but every time I plot something, I feel like I don't want to write it because I've figured it out and it's boring. So I pants and I'm grateful for pantsing because it gets words on the page. And even if they end up leaving, it's getting me to where I need to go.
And just the last one of that fast four. Are you someone that sets writing goals? And if so, what are they for you at the moment?
I think the writing goal is write today. Something. That's my goal sometimes. And whether it's a note, a prompt on my phone to say, this is an idea I was thinking of, revisit it when you have time.
Yeah.
That makes me feel good because I know I have something waiting for me to come back to.
Fantastic.
Yes, small stakes with my goals.
All right, Lindsay, thanks so much for doing this chat and all the best with Imogen. I can't wait to read it, and I think it's going to be so well received out there.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks, Kat.